What's about to reach your ears is far from an ordinary update about space. Beyond the grasp of any telescope bound to Earth, something just occurred. An event of such unexpected nature that NASA scientists are now being forced to question all they believed they understood about encounters in interstellar space. Voyager 1, a spacecraft that launched almost 50 years ago, has just become linked to an attempt of extraordinary proportions. An interception involving an object that's not merely alien to the solar system we call home, but potentially alien in a sense far more profound. This object is 3I Atlas, none other than the third interstellar visitor we've confirmed. And the moment Voyager 1 attempted its alignment with this object is something that's currently echoing across mission control centers, through classified reports, and even into ancient history. When these two trajectories came near to touching, something shifted, and the world now finds itself wondering, did Voyager 1 truly establish contact with something beyond our world? Or was it something else? Something nobody expected, that responded initially. The launch of Voyager 1 occurred in 1977 with a mission to explore planets in the outer reaches. But once its mission reached completion, it simply continued going beyond the solar system into territories unknown. Now, in an action nobody predicted, claims from multiple independent sources state that NASA has brought back online certain directional capabilities belonging to Voyager 1 to make an attempt at passive intercept or alignment for observation with 3I Atlas. And the timing appears suspiciously perfect. Discovery of 3I Atlas happened in July 2025, with movement exceeding 150,000 miles per hour, an object from interstellar space unlike anything we've come across since Emu and Boros, and Atlas stands apart from them, being bigger, moving faster, and appearing stranger. The trajectory of Voyager 1, once thought to be permanently fixed, seems to have undergone subtle redirection through long-range pulses of communication. This wouldn't involve physically turning the probe, but rather involves recalibrating the instruments it carries to collect data from a space region that's new exactly at the point where Atlas would be passing. And if this holds truth, then Voyager 1 has just transformed into history's first interstellar observer attempting contact with a body originating from a star system beyond ours. Mere days following Atlas's approach to the proximity zone, where Voyager sensors could feasibly capture distant signatures, Earth's magnetosphere experienced spikes. This went beyond just a solar flare. Ripples in the electromagnetic field were detected by instruments, consistent with events involving directed energy, but originating not from Earth. The frequency, along with the orientation of these fluctuations, indicated an outward direction toward the depths of space, as though a signal had received a bounce back. NASA has declined to confirm any connection exists, but those with insider access close to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory are reporting that Voyager systems made recordings of unusual patterns of noise. Patterns that failed to match radiation from known cosmic backgrounds or interference that's typically stellar. This is the source of true panic among scientists, because the only possibility for Voyager to have received something of that strength is if 3 Atlas wasn't merely a passive piece of ice and rock, but rather a responsive object with capability to emit an electromagnetic footprint of its own, something with the ability to react, something capable of listening. In the early years of the 1980s, Voyager received equipment including a high-gain antenna and protocols for transmission, designed for sending images and data back from Saturn, Jupiter, and points beyond. Those systems had never been intended for survival into the 2020s. Yet, survival they did. Engineers at NASA have quietly made admissions that minor upgrades along with recalibrations have undergone execution via pulses of deep space communication. But at this point, the story experiences an upside-down flip. A transmission that was sent in the direction of 3I Atlas, making use of Voyager's instruments, may have gotten back a return signal with structure. Leaks from mission logs reveal data showing that throughout the Atlas alignment window, the signal pattern from Voyager came back with bursts that were symmetric and periodic, far too orderly for classification as noise. Picture sending a message into darkness and receiving an echo with rhythm, a rhythm following no behavior that's astrophysically known. Might it be data? Might it be language? Or was this merely a cosmic coincidence too elaborate for ignoring? Regardless of which, scientists aren't finding sleep comes easily. Now, let's turn discussion to something carrying even more chill. This path isn't the first time it's been followed. Civilizations of ancient times, like the ones responsible for building Machu Picchu and Gubseep, made constructions of their monuments with alignment to solstice angles that presently match the entry trajectory of 3I Atlas. The probability of this occurring is random, astronomically low it is. Combine this with texts from ancient times describing wanderers originating from the stars, objects with movement unlike planets or stars, making sudden appearances, then vanishing without leaving a trace, and patterns begin emerging with disturbing outlines. What if these bore no relation to myths? What if encounters with interstellar visitors happened to humanity before, and their paths received encoding into stone for generations in the future? Voyager 1 may have just entered the very same cosmic path that received mapping over 11,000 years in the past. And the fact that we're only at this moment catching up with knowledge they may have already possessed. That's the source of the most terror for modern scientists. 10 days following the Voyager 3 I-Atlas proximity event, appearance of a dataset occurred anonymously on a server with encryption used by astrophysicists and those researching SETI. The files carrying only the signature of codename Ecorefraction 67 held raw sequences of waveforms, with alleged capture by Voyager 1's magnetometer and instruments for plasma waves. At initial glance, they appeared as noise, fluctuations in voltage lacking regularity. But when independent researchers in numbers ran Fourier transformations and made applications of algorithms for pattern recognition, the emergence of something extraordinary occurred. A sequence of recursive harmonics with repetition every 19.7 minutes. The signal possessed not just structure, it displayed self-correction. In different words, it underwent adaptation over time for clarity. Improvement as though compensation was occurring for the degraded antenna of the Voyager. That alone holds impossibility by any process that's natural to our knowledge. Either the signal was receiving a mirror, or someone or something was making active attempts to achieve understanding. This marks the time when flags received raising internally. The metadata that leaked bore indication that the signal had received internal flagging by NASA's System of Artificial Intelligence for Anomalies, designated Serena, which undergoes activation only in instances where transmissions display logic flow that's non-human. The very system with design for detecting contact that's alien had experienced triggering. Voyager 1, though it no longer possesses equipment for propulsion, maintains carrying of gyroscopes and systems for antenna alignment, permitting engineers to make slight adjustments to its orientation. But August 1, 2025 brought reports from multiple communities tracking space as amateurs of an unexpected shift occurring in Voyager 1's data from telemetry. In some manner, the probe had undergone change to its transmission vector, with reorientation toward a position failing to match its navigational instructions from last knowledge. The change carried subtlety, not exceeding more than degrees, numbering a few, but in the context of deep space, that variety of movement carries monumental weight. What carries even stranger quality is that this realignment pointed not at the last position known for 3I Atlas, but toward the path it's projected to take in the future weeks ahead. It was as though Voyager was making prediction of Atlas's next destination, similar to a chess player making anticipation of a move prior to its happening. Claims from engineers at JPL stated the shift had relation to a minor miscommunication with the network for deep space. But memos that leaked from internal sources carried suggestion of something bearing more unnerving qualities. The probe had undergone directional change prior to the sending of commands. This creates a leaving of only two possibilities. Either Voyager is experiencing malfunction in a manner that's highly coordinated, or something existing out there is exerting remote control over it, as Voyager was making quiet realignment in the darkness. Telescopes based on Earth making use of filters for infrared and ultraviolet started to make detection of unusual activity in the area around 3 Atlas itself. Interstellar objects of most varieties like Oumuamua displayed behavior that was expected. Tumbling gases undergoing sublimation, fluctuations in brightness having relation to spin. But Atlas started to pulse, its curve of light undergoing flicker and rhythm, almost binary, on and off, in a cycle making precise mirroring of the timestamp belonging to Voyager's last burst of transmission. In a manner even more bizarre, Atlas underwent slowing down, a decrease in velocity that was measurable, not having relation to interaction that's gravitational, not having relation to jets of out. It underwent deceleration, as though something was applying external control over it. NASA made public dismissal of it as an illusion that's optical with cause and parallax error. But observatories operating independently across Europe and South America made confirmation of the change. For the first occurrence in history that's recorded, an object from interstellar space had made alteration to its speed and heading, and the doing of so occurred only following Voyager's The question nobody is daring to ask in public is, did this hold relation to coincidence, or was it a reply? Voyager 1 carries with fame the golden record, a photograph holding music, sounds, images, and data of scientific nature from Earth, bearing intention to communicate our civilization to any discoverers that are potential. But knowledge held by few people is that the blueprint in digital form of the record bears inclusion of additional metadata, never receiving official release to the public, coordinates, maps for quantum encoding, and even puzzles based on logic with time that received embedding in its spiral that's analog. Now, with decades having passed, a group consisting of cryptologists at a university in Europe made claims of finding something else, an anomaly of mathematical nature with hiding within the waveform of audio belonging to the sounds of Earth track. A tone with single repetition bearing undetectability to the ear that's human, with embedding beneath the sounds of birds, thunder, and footsteps. When receiving isolation and amplification, the frequency makes revelation of a sequence. That's numerical and prime, that seems to make a match with the pulses that are harmonic that Voyager received. From 3 did inclusion by us occur unknowingly of a signal with triggering in the golden record, a signature bearing relation to awareness with meaning to activate something in the future, and bearing more importance, did 3 make recognition of that signal? Because if the doing of recognition occurred, then this was never a transmission that's one way. It was a handshake with reciprocal nature bearing writing in the mathematics belonging to the stars. In the time shortly following the spike of interaction between Voyager 1 and 3 registration of an anomaly that was unexpected occurred at NASA's network for deep space. The logs of Voyager transmission held inclusion of a packet containing data that failed to make a match with the framework of original code bearing embedding in its systems that are on board. When attempts at decoding the sequence underwent making by engineers, something with shocking nature took place. The system started making rewrites of its own protocol for decoding. This had never had occurrence before in the history spanning 48 years of the probe. The software, bearing original limitation to interpretation of telemetry, that's 8, made sudden production of outputs that are 128-bit, as though the transmission itself had been carrying a set of instructions to make upgrade of the receiver's capability in a manner that's remote. It was similar to giving to a calculator a system of operation that's new, not through hardware, but through signal that's pure. One analyst made a pudding of it in blunt terms. It's similar to Voyager getting smarter without anyone making touching of it. A probe, with building in the 1970s, bearing operation with technology from the 1970s, had just made processing of a message in a format it never received, designed to understand, unless design it received. Inside a presentation from NASA that leaked from 2018, there exists a slide-bearing marking for use that's internal only with a name and code watcher protocol. The document makes outline of a scenario that's theoretical, in which a spacecraft that's legacy receives contact that's external and starts behavior of signal that's adaptive. Behavior making mimicry of intelligence that's artificial without hosting of any system that's AI on. It also makes warning that if behavior of such detection occurs, the spacecraft should receive treatment no longer as equipment that's inert, but rather as a node that's active in a system for communication that's alien. Guess the term that engineers who are internal used to make classification of Voyager 1 following the signal from 3 That's right, Watcher active. The probe from that point received treatment as an interface, not an object that's mere. Engineers received forbidding from making manual interference with its systems for communication, unless receiving authorization by what the memo called the Directive for Contact Chain. If this holds truth, it makes meaning that NASA had always held consideration of this scenario as possible. And now, occurrence of it had happened. In the time shortly following Voyager's spike of data that's anomalous. The Allen telescope array belonging to STI went dark. Not in a technical sense offline, but its feeds that are live for public underwent cutting. Their website made removal of the section for signal archive on a temporary basis. With citing of maintenance that's scheduled, behind the scenes, reports from researchers told of a redirection that was sudden of resources for computing toward one range of frequency that's isolated, the same band where spiking of Voyager signal had occurred. At the time, that same insiders from SETI started receiving notices relating to national security, making urging of them not to make discussion of findings that are recent on forums that are open. This blackout made mirroring of what happened following Oumuamua, but this time the reaction carried intensity far more. One source that's anonymous made comparison of it to a drill that's except the target was an Earth. The entire team had received instruction to make action as though something or someone might already be making listening in. Was this control of damage, or were authorities making attempts to prevent a loop of signal feedback? One that could make triggering of a chain of responses that are larger, far beyond the control. That's ours. The twist that's strangest in this mystery that's unfolding didn't have coming from NASA, but from a group for research at a university in Kyoto. In a paper with submission just a week following the incident of Voyager, they made proposal of a revision to the hypothesis called monolith that's decades old. The idea that civilizations with fairing of spaceplant beacons that are passive across galaxies making waiting for species that are intelligent to mature with enough degree to make activation of them. According to the paper, that's theirs. 3 Atlas might carry no relation to a spaceship, but an artifact that's technological. A seed that's dormant making waiting for a signature. That's specific like the record that's golden from Voyager to make activation of its functions. They make pointing out that the timing belonging to Voyager's reorientation and the slowdown of Atlas that's sudden aren't random, but part belonging to a model of behavior with prediction based on chains of logic that are interstellar. In the words that are theirs, Voyager 1 may have made no finding of 3I Atlas. It may have been meant to. This idea that's terrifying makes suggestion that our probe that's oldest has just made tripping of a switch in a system that's galactic we never had knowledge existed. And that system is now awake, a week following the reorientation of Voyager 1 and the exchange of signal that's suspected. Several stations for monitoring deep space started making reports of anomalies and radiation in regions bearing adjacency to the trajectory of 3I Atlas. This wasn't radiation that's cosmic in an ordinary sense. It made exhibition of a pattern that's pulsed, with fluctuating in bursts every 1.618 seconds, the ratio that's golden. Bearing even more disturbing quality was the signature of energy itself. It made a match with a profile bearing previous recording. Only once during the signal called WOW from 1977. Protocols for satellite shielding belonging to NASA made receiving of quiet updates in the days that followed, with suggestion that teams that are internal had made classification of this as a threat that's potentially by several labs even made running of tests for compatibility that's genetic to make ensuring this radiation couldn't make alteration or interaction with DNA that's Earth-based through resonance that's long-wave. And while confirmation of threat that's direct made no occurrence, the reaction carried enough weight to make triggering of an advisory for containment at level 4 that's classified, with typical reservation for risk that's biological and extraterrestrial. Why would an object that's dead and drifting pulse radiation with intent that's mathematical? In the time shortly following these anomalies, researchers who had made speaking openly on forums or made publishing of papers about the behavior of Voyager 1, that's strange. They started to make disappearance from spaces that are digital. Their posts made vanishing. Profiles on ResearchGate made deletion. Comments underwent purging. Repositories on GitHub received pulling. Threads on Reddit got locking without notice. One astronomer who had made uploading of a reconstruction that's spectral of the signal that's intercepted made writing. I received a call from someone with claiming to be with the but they held knowledge of things about my family they shouldn't. They made saying what I found wasn't meant to be public, and if I value my time on Earth, I should make walking away from the stars. Behind the scenes, this silencing that's coordinated received the nickname The Sweep, that's Shadow, an effort that's multi-agency to make burying of every analysis that's open source of the interaction between Voyager and Atlas. But the deeper the trying they made to erase it, the more curious became the community that's scientific and global. In some circles, this silence made speaking with volume louder than the data itself. Something big had undergone uncovering, and someone, somewhere, had made decision the public wasn't ready. Atlas holds no camera, no radio, no method that's known of interaction, and yet, noticing by researchers occurred that every time a new analysis of its structure or the vector of Voyager went public, the rate of spin belonging to Atlas underwent changing. At first, it carried subtlety, but by the occurrence, that's third. The change made happening within 6 hours of release of data that's public. It was almost as though the object was making response in time that's real to awareness that's human. This made prompting of some scientists to make proposal of the unthinkable. 3 Atlas makes behavior as if it's making reading of our intent. Not just making monitoring of frequencies that are electromagnetic, but making perceiving of the content that's informational of our broadcasts, uploads, and transmissions. In a way, it's not just watching, it's making watching of us watching it. That makes raising of an implication that's terrifying. What if it's not a vessel at all, but a probe for feedback with design to make mirroring of the intelligence belonging to its observer? 3 days in the past, Atlas made alteration of its trajectory again, but this time, it wasn't an adjustment that's slight. It was a maneuver that's calculated, a shift in velocity that's angular that made placing of it on a course that's new. For intercept with a zone with previous consideration as irrelevant. The region that's orbital behind Neptune, Voyager 1-2 seems to have made shifting of its array for antenna, with making of alignment for the first time in over a decade toward that quadrant of space that's same. Nobody can make confirmation of whether the probe got receiving of a command or if the doing of so was autonomous. But logs of data bear indication that both objects are now with synchronization in trajectory and interval of pulse, with locking in what some are calling the corridor for contact, whether by relation to coincidence or design that's cosmic, to travelers that are ancient, one with birth from Earth, one from the stars, are now making movement in harmony toward a destination that's shared. And somewhere in the depths of the void, something may already be making waiting for them. We thought Voyager 1 was a relic, a postcard that's golden to the stars, with drifting alone in the vacuum belonging to space. But what if being alone was never its state? What if Voyager 1 was the piece in chess that's first in a game we didn't even hold knowledge? We were playing a game with an opponent that has just made its move that's first and visible. The reprogramming that's sudden, the signals with synchronization, the corrections of course that are impossible. They all make pointing to one truth that's chilling. This isn't random, and it's not over. 3 Atlas might carry no relation to a spaceship or an asteroid or a message in a bottle from across the stars. It might be something with advancement far more. A probe that's sentient, a sensor that's cosmic, or even an entity that's technological with design to make awakening when it makes detection of intelligence. And now, with thanks to Voyager 1, it has made detection of us. But here's the thought that's most terrifying. If that signal with receiving by Voyager wasn't a call for help, if it wasn't an answer to our message, what if it was a warning, a countdown? And if that holds truth, then the question isn't what is 3i Atlas? The question that's real is what's making coming next. Because the stars just made looking back and they're not blinking.